For nearly 20 years, Nicole Kidman and Keith Urban looked like the kind of couple Hollywood swore didn't exist anymore. Their red carpet smiles, quiet hand squeezes, and soft interviews painted the picture of love that could outlast the noise. They were the dream, two artists, two hearts that had seen chaos, finally finding stillness together. But stillness in their world rarely lasts. When Keith Urban walked onto that American stage for the first time since the divorce went public, the crowd expected heartbreak ballads and broken man confessions. Instead, he said nothing. Just music, eyes closed, and silence so heavy, it spoke louder than gossip ever could. To understand that silence, you have to rewind to Nicole Kidman's first definition of love. Long before country guitars and Nashville sunsets, there was Tom Cruise, the megastar who taught her that devotion can look like possession when the cameras go dark. She was 23, all curiosity and red hair, the kind of young that still believes in destiny. He was the world's most famous leading man, and she thought he hung the stars. Everyone told her not to do it, agents, friends, even family. But Nicole had always been the kind of woman who mistook warnings for dares. She wanted a forever story, not a safe one. For a while, she got it. The mansion, the premieres, the applause. 2 adopted children, Isabella and Connor, smiles for photographers, coordinated outfits, and that dizzying belief that love could rewrite anything. But the longer she stood beside him, the more she disappeared. Somewhere between scripts and ceremonies, she stopped being Nicole Kidman the artist and became Nicole, the accessory to someone else's legend. It wasn't that he took her light, it's that she forgot she had her own. When the divorce hit in 2001, it landed like a slap she never saw coming. One day she was a wife, the next she was a headline. The world speculated, the tabloids feasted, and she went quiet. But that quiet was where her rebirth began. She turned pain into art. Roles in the Hours, Moulin Rouge, Cold Mountain, stories about women who lost everything but learned how to breathe again. That's what she was doing, learning how to breathe. Yet even while success returned, a part of her still ached for something ordinary. Not fame, not validation, just peace. Someone who wouldn't need saving. Someone who wouldn't shrink her. Someone who could sit in silence and not be threatened by it. Then came Keith Urban. He didn't walk into her life with movie star charm or grand gestures. He walked in with vulnerability. A musician from New Zealand who grew up around addiction and learned early that applause can't drown out loneliness. Behind the smooth smile and the southern twang was a man terrified of becoming his father. Terrified of the bottle. Terrified of love he might ruin. He had fame, fans, and hits climbing charts, but he was restless. Drunk on chaos, sober on stage. When he met Nicole at a charity gala in 2005, he said later he never believed she'd look twice at him. She did, because what she saw wasn't glamour. It was gentleness. For months he kept her number but never called. Maybe fear, maybe timing, maybe both. She joked later that she thought he'd forgotten her entirely. Then one morning her phone rang and everything changed. They talked for hours about childhood, family, the ache of being known by everyone but understood by no one. She didn't want to rescue him, and he didn't try to impress her. They just spoke, and for once she felt seen without performing. Friends said it was instant, 2 wounded hearts recognizing each other by their scars. And maybe that's what it was. 2 survivors mistaking understanding for destiny. Their love grew fast, too fast. Within a year, they were engaged, whispering promises beneath candlelight instead of spotlights. When Keith Urban stood beside her in Sydney in 2006, voice shaking as he said, "I do," it felt like the world had paused just to let them have their peace. She walked down the aisle in soft white, not as a star, but as a woman daring to believe again. He looked at her like she was a miracle he didn't deserve. For both of them, it wasn't just a wedding, it was a rescue. She burned her old diaries that night, pages filled with pain and powerlessness. He swore the addiction was behind him. 2 people rewriting their histories with hope as ink, but love born out of healing carries its own weight. Just months after that fairy tale, the ghost Keith had outrun came knocking again. The late nights returned, the hollow eyes, the exhaustion that no applause could fix. Nicole recognized the signs. She had seen them before, lived them before, and this time she refused to watch another love dissolve into chaos. 4 months after their vows, she called his friends, gathered his team, and quietly staged an intervention. No press, no judgment, no ultimatums. Just a woman fighting for the man she refused to lose. He entered rehab that same week. While tabloids speculated, Nicole Kidman stayed silent, her strength the kind that doesn't need an audience. When he finally came home, sober and humbled, he said she had saved his life. But what no one realized then was that in saving him, she might have started losing parts of herself again. Still, at that time, love looked stronger than ever. They left Hollywood for a small Tennessee farm, traded red carpets for quiet dinners, and swore this time it would be different. For a while it was. For a while, the world believed in them again. The farm in Tennessee felt like a whispered prayer come true. Morning light on the porch, 2 coffee mugs cooling too fast, laughter echoing from little feet down the hall. Nicole Kidman found a rhythm there. Horses breathing in the cold, dinner simmering while Scripps sat face down on the counter, and Keith Urban humming melodies he said were for her. Their daughters, Sunday and Faith, rearranged the house like sunlight. For a while, that was the whole story. Routine, recovery, the sacredness of small things. He wrote songs that sounded like apologies turned into gratitude. She chose roles that weren't escape hatches, but mirrors. When grief came for her father, Keith Urban crossed oceans and sang Amazing Grace with a crack in his voice that told the truth. This family had stitched him back together. People called them the most grounded couple in Hollywood. Maybe they were. Or maybe they were just the best at choosing love over noise, until the noise crept back in anyway. Fame is a patient shadow. It waits on the porch like weather. Keith Urban needed the road, the touring, the adrenaline, the impossible standard of his own perfection. Nicole Kidman needed rootedness, the steadiness of bedtime stories and quiet sets near Nashville. Their schedules began to tug them in opposite directions, gently at first, then with the insistence of tides. The affection stayed, the loyalty too, but the spark that once burned the edges of every room started to live under glass. They told themselves it was a season. Seasons pass, except some don't. There were small moments that didn't feel small when the lights were off. A late return from the studio that turned into dawn. A half-answered question becoming 2 days of careful, patient smiles. The way Keith Urban stood on stage with a grin bright enough for the last row, then stared at the dressing room floor like the applause had taken something with it. The way Nicole Kidman posted a soft anniversary photo, "Forever, my love," and the comments filled with hearts while her phone stayed quiet longer than it used to. No fights to headline, no scandal you could sell. Just distance, sipping their days in slow sips. Then the crack everyone felt but couldn't name got a sound. An interview gone sideways. Someone joked about on-screen intimacy, and Keith Urban's voice hesitated, then vanished into a dropped call the internet replayed 1,000 times. Days later, fans swore they heard a shifted lyric at a show, a line that used to be promise now bent into a goodbye. Maybe it was nothing. Maybe it was everything. What mattered wasn't the line. It was the silence after. Keith Urban played on. Nicole Kidman didn't correct the rumors. And silence is its own press release. When the separation became public, it arrived with the cold, precise language of statements and timelines. 19 years, 2 daughters, hundreds of red carpets, one home that kept the best secrets. Nicole Kidman filed the papers with the same elegance she wore to premieres. No spectacle, no scorekeeping, just a closed door and the soft thud of a lock turning for the last time. Friends described her not as angry, but emptied out and resolute. She had given so much grace there wasn't any left to bargain with. Keith Urban didn't offer a manifesto. He let the music talk, and the music sounded like wind at the end of a long field. Open, wistful, honest enough to hurt. Theories multiplied because theories always do. Touring swallowed the marriage. Or time did. Or the old ghosts came back to stare through windows. Allegations drifted across podcasts, carefully phrased, heavy with insinuation, light on proof. Nicole Kidman refused to feed the machine. Keith Urban refused to swing back. In a culture that wants villains, they chose to be human. 2 people who had saved each other once discovering that salvation isn't a mortgage on forever. If there was a final conversation, it probably wasn't cinematic. More likely a kitchen at 2 a.m., 2 hands around the same mug, 2 pairs of eyes that knew the math. We can keep going and watch the love turn into something we don't recognize. Or we can guard what's left by stepping away. In the end, they chose mercy. Mercy for the children who deserved a home without footnotes. Mercy for the memories which deserved not to be rewritten as lies. Mercy for themselves, 2 artists who had built a sanctuary and didn't want to live there as ghosts. Afterward, Nicole Kidman did what she has always done when the earth shifts under her feet. She made meaning out of the rubble. Work, motherhood, faith, 3 anchors braided into one rope. She spoke about resilience in a way that didn't sound like a slogan, but a practice. Feel it, learn it, release it. She didn't torch the past. She curated it. There were pictures she kept and pictures she boxed. There were songs she turned off mid-chorus, then learned to hear without flinching. And day by day, she returned to the woman she had become in Tennessee. The one who believed love is brave. But so is leaving when staying asks you to trade the last quiet parts of yourself. And Keith Urban? He kept showing up to the mic. The show must go on, but it doesn't have to lie. Some nights he talked about gratitude like it was a person in the front row. Some nights he didn't talk at all, just played until the guitar said the thing words couldn't. He looked like a man who knew the difference between winning and surviving, and he chose the latter. Maybe that's maturity. Maybe it's penance. Maybe it's both. What remains is not a scandal. It's a syllabus. Nicole Kidman learned that love is not a rescue job you perform forever. Keith Urban learned that being saved once doesn't mean you never have to hold the line yourself. Together, they proved a stranger truth. A marriage can succeed for 19 years and still end without failing. The purpose of it may have been to carry 2 wounded people from one life into another, to give them daughters, to teach them tenderness, to soften the edges that fame sharpens. The purpose fulfilled, the story completes itself. So the next time someone asks what really happened, the honest answer might be disappointingly simple. They loved each other as far as love would go. They chose peace over performance at the finish line. Nicole Kidman stepped forward lighter, not because she lost less, but because she finally set down what wasn't hers to carry. Keith Urban kept singing, not to prove anything, but to keep faith with the part of himself she helped him find. And somewhere in Tennessee, the porch remembers both of them. The morning light, 2 mugs, laughter down the hall, proof that not all endings burn. Some just grow quiet and then they let you begin again. And they let you begin again.